Hi, it's Veronica with the Crafty Oasis. Today I wanted to show you how I designed a gamer savings challenge from scratch in Canva, and this is for my son. He wanted to save up for a Nintendo Switch 2, so we broke that savings amount of $500 down into $25 increments, and I walk you through the process from design to print and lamination. So we'll go ahead and head over into Canva and get started. Now that we're in Canva, we'll create a new design that is 8.5 by 11, which is the US portrait size. Once we have our canvas set up, we'll go into elements, and you can either type in shapes, or because I use it so frequently, it's usually in my recently used, and I select a square. Make sure that you do select the square shape because this allows you to manipulate the proportions. With the rectangle still selected, click or tap on position and change the width to 3 inches and the height to 6. Next, I duplicated this rectangle and I made sure that they were right next to each other, not overlapping, but nearly overlapping so that it creates a front and a back when you fold them in half. Next, I add a text box by going to the left, and I just select heading because I always change the color and the font and size anyway. So I start with that, and then I typed in level up your savings, since this is a gamer themed savings challenge. And then I found a really fun font for gaming or retro arcade type stuff called Arcade Gamer, and I changed it to a green that's very well contrasted, but also it's my son's favorite color since this is for him. Next, I insert the image of a gaming control that I created in Cricut a couple years ago. I did this just by manipulating shapes and playing with them. On a side note, I really enjoy doing that. You can use a pre-uploaded design or one that you search for in Canva. Just be mindful if you don't have Canva Pro and you see a crown next to an element, that means that it costs additional money. So sometimes in your design that could rack up $10 or $15 if you're not aware of that. So I just place that below and then I center it. And because there's not enough contrast, when I printed this out, I actually changed the colors for the physical savings challenge. To go along with the gamer theme, I selected an up arrow from the elements section so that way he could check them off with each contribution to his savings challenge. I duplicated the arrow shape once I had it to the size that I liked, and then I duplicated it so there were 5 in a row, and once there were 5 in a row, I kept it highlighted and then clicked on the 3 dots and then chose select multiple and grouped them as 1. Then I duplicated that row until there were 4, so there's a total of 20 arrows to check off. I thought it would be fun to give my son a mission, so there's a verbiage that I add, and that way he knows that it's still going along with the gamer theme, and his mission is to save $500. And then I also explain on the back what the arrows denote. So when we're looking at this on the screen, the left side with the arrows, that will be the back once we actually print it out and laminate it to create the Savings Challenge envelope. And then on the right, where it has a controller with mission, save $500, etc., that will be the front. And so I will show you that part in just a few minutes. I added a few more gaming style elements to this just to make it a little bit more fun. So I add a start box by going to elements, and then I add the square again. And what I do is I add an outline. So you have it selected and you choose the rectangles that get progressively smaller, and then you can change the stroke weight and the color. So I changed the color to match the green of the actual outline, and then the color fill, which is the circle, the color circle, I changed that to transparent, which has that checkered background with the red line through it. And I change it to match the green of the words. And then I duplicate this text box and type in start. So I put Ready Gamer 1 above it and then start. And I'll change the size so that it fills the start box fully. Back, I add one more text box under the arrows. It says mission complete, here is your reward, and then it has a picture of what my son is saving for, and he actually requested that I put that in there, and I thought it was a really good idea. So in just a moment I will show you the actual physical process of laminating and cutting the Savings Challenge envelope, so stay tuned. As I mentioned, I changed the colors because once I printed the Savings Challenge paper out, it didn't have enough contrast in real life. So I did still print the black one with the gray just so you could see. And then I have my laminator warming up. I do use the 3 ml setting, but even if you're using 3 ml lamination sheets, you can still use the 5 ml because that sets it at a higher temperature, and that way you know that it'll be sealed even better. So I'm using a paper cutter. You don't have to, if you make your own, you can just use scissors, but I really find this very helpful. It saves some of the stress on my hands and the fatigue and the cramping that my hands get after a while. So I just line up with the edge of the design right where that blue ruler part is, and then I have the blade cut just beyond that so that there's a little bit of an offset, and that way it'll be helpful when I laminate it as well. But you want to cut the shape first before you laminate. So now we're just going to do this on all sides. We do not cut through the middle because what we're doing is we are going to fold this in half to make it a double-sided challenge. So we'll repeat these steps for the gray one, or however many you actually print out and will be using. So I just printed 2 in this video. Now that we have everything cut out, what we'll do is we will fold our Savings Challenge in half along the white line that's in the middle, and just get it to as close to even as possible. Once we've folded both of our Savings Challenges, we'll go ahead and open up the laminated pouch and place them in. So I'm placing them vertical so that I can have 2, and I don't place them completely up against the seam of the pouch, but pretty close. And I space them this far apart, which ends up being about 2 inches, because I need to have some room in between when I'm cutting not just in between them, but around them, so that I can have one part that will be hole punched to put into the binder, and then the other side will be cut so that it actually opens as an envelope. And you'll see that in just a moment. So once I have them positioned, I'm just holding it up so you can see in the camera. I will place it in the laminator, and I'm showing you that I have about 1/2 inch on either side of on the side of each savings paper. So I run it through the laminator twice, and then we will see you in the next step. Now that we have our savings challenge laminated, what we're going to do is just cut it in half, get to as close to the center as possible, because again, you'll need some in the middle. Now to cut the laminated border so that you don't cut the bottom of the design unless you want it to be a bottom opening envelope, we'll make sure that we extend a little bit past that white line, and that's where we'll set the blade to cut. And you just repeat this on what will be the top and the bottom because it'll be vertical in the binder. So now you see that there's that clean edge on the left if you're looking at it. That will be hole punched. And then on the right, what you'll see is I'm actually going to cut where we laminated over the printed design as well, because you have to cut a little sliver of that off because that will actually create the slit for your envelope. Now we'll check to make sure that it opens, and voila, it does. So the next thing we'll do is hole punch this so it fits in an A6 binder. For my A6 binder puncher, you have to make sure that you move these little knobs over to where it says personal on the back. And I can show you that. You can't really see the wording personal, but personal is the setting that you'll need. And then what I would suggest doing is a trial punch, because you don't want to have to remake your project if you can avoid that. So now that we have the settings, what I do is I grab a scrap piece of paper and I do my trial punch, and I also have my binder right there as a reference. Now that I've cut the scrap paper, I bring it up to the binder spine and just make sure that the holes are aligned. And I opened it up, make sure it can fit, and thumbs up, it did. If it didn't, just readjust and then keep punching on your scrap paper until it does. I finally get to punch the laminated savings challenge envelopes, and I just want you to be mindful. So make sure that you're punching the side that had the 1/2 inch border around it, and center it as much as possible on the puncher before you punch. That way when you put it in the binder, it doesn't stick out of the top or bottom. And then if you made multiple of these, go ahead and punch as many as you have. Find a home for your savings challenge envelope in your binder and then place it in. And then next what we'll do is we will make sure that dollar bills actually fit in the envelope. I opened the envelope to make sure that dollar bills actually fit, and it does. So yay, success. Have fun saving for your gaming challenge, and thank you so much for watching the video. If you found it valuable, please share and save. Have a great day.